Well, hello everyone. This is Donna McCauley in the DMQuilting studio, and I apologize for the little bit of a delay here in getting started. We were having a few technical difficulties. It seems like Facebook does that to me periodically. Anyway, I couldn't get it to get going here, but now we are, and I'm glad that you joined me. We're going to just kind of hang back a little bit here so that some folks can sign on and get here with us. We have a few people I see coming on now, and quite a few people have been looking around trying to find out how to find us, and so I hope that they are able to make it here with us today. This is really kind of a fun little thing. We have some new templates, and we're going to take a look at those. There's two different sets, the wiggles and the coils, and we're going to be doing a little bit of stitching with both of those. So let's just move things out of the way. And what I want to show you real quick, like this is a sample piece that I used and started working on one day last week for the Basket of Daisies project class. And so this was the sample where I stitched out the daisies and showed how to use the templates. And then I went ahead and embellished a little bit. I actually used the daisy template and did an overlay applique by placing a piece of fabric right on top after I've done all my cutaway for the template and stitched that. And the same thing over here. So that's all that is. But I thought there's an awful lot of open space back in here. This is just a small piece. It measures about 16 by 20 in size, and it really is not one of the projects that was in the instructions. It was just a sample on how to do some of the stitching and things like that. So there is not a pattern. It's just kind of a modification of the Basket of Daisies. And so it was a great opportunity, I thought, to show how we can use the COILS templates. And I hope you can see that. Okay, let's see if we can adjust the light a little bit. Sometimes that makes a lot of difference. I think you can see here where the stitching is. So the COILS is really 4 different sizes of spirals. So the smallest size is 4.5 inches and the largest one is 6 inches. And so there is 4.5, 5, 5.5, and 6 inches in the 4 sizes. And the way they work, they can be used together, overlapping as I did here. I didn't really have a placement plan. You can see they're just kind of twisted and turned wherever. Some of them are even overlapping my applique down here. And so there's just kind of some fun stuff. But it makes some quick work of some all over quilting or some background fill. And we're going to stitch them out here in a few minutes. I don't have a stitched out sample of what the wiggles are because we're going to create one. And so they are pretty cool too. Hold on just a second, and we'll take a look at what the templates are. I have my black fabric here so that we can actually see what we're looking at. And these are the 2 different sizes of the wiggles. What they are is a stitch path that lets you wiggle along and just create some not swirls, some squiggles. And so once we stitch to the end, we can spin the template around and go on. Works kind of like, oh goodness, the ribbon candy and the winding ways and things like that, where we mark a a line for placement, just so we kind of have an idea. It doesn't even have to be a total solid line, just a dash line here and there. This shows what would be, in this case, our center vertical line, and then down here the thread slot does the same thing. There's also stop indicators across here for alignment, and then this would be the center. So the total span of our stitched pattern is 3 inches. This one is 1 inch top or from the side, depending on how you're turning it. So 1 by 3, and this one will stitch a 2 by 3, but it has 2 different options in how you can stitch it. It has the alignment marks right on here too, and the center runs all the way through it, whether you're going vertically or horizontally, helps with alignment. These are kind of some fun little templates, and on the back side of the packaging there shows a few ways, types of patterns that you could create your own wiggles combinations. So these are templates that my thinking in the designing of them was that we could have something that we could use in some narrow borders or sashing or in some rows and create a span. Here is just some different ways where they can overlap and turn and things like that. Real easy to use and lots of fun to play with. For the coils, they're a little different. They're a little bigger. And let's take a look at the packaging on that. What we have here, I always like to include what I call the user information that identifies what all of the lines are for. Right here, this particular one shows that we have a square etched line in there. So if we were trying to fit inside a square block, those might be what you would want to use as an aid in your centering. There is also the diagonals and vertical and horizontal and things like that. So all of these different bits of information is just to help you. Here is a sample of how you could use all 4 templates and stitch them together. They actually work together like that, and this kind of looks like ram's horns. But once you get to the center, then you can change templates to another size and go back out and change to another and go back in and still end up back at center. And then to create a wave motion, you can just do that in continuous row. So they're real easy. All 4 of them work the very same way. They're just different sizes. So I don't have anyone monitoring my questions here. So I'm going to just real quickly take a quick scan and see if there's anything I need to address. Don't go away. I don't really see that we have any questions here yet, so that's a good thing. Okay, it looks like my questions are kind of taking care of themselves. So like I said, I don't have Vanna with me here today. She is off doing some other things. We probably should have connected. I did do some chatting with her earlier. But we're going to wing it together. So if she happens to be on here, she knows what some of these answers are and might be able to help. So let's just get some fabric, and I'm going to need to move the camera just a little bit so that we can do some stitching. So do we have anyone out there that already has the COILS or the WIGGLES templates? Just in the comments, let me know if that's the case. And I'm going to move the camera over a little. So that we can see, and probably need to do something with these lights. So here we are. This fabric is kind of a purple color. It looks pretty much like blue, but it's a purple. But we can see here. Now I chose to do my coil stitching in a color that is kind of subtle. It honestly doesn't really show up a lot, but the texture does. And so I think you can probably see that. My daughter selected a green color for me, and so she was thinking some little swirly vines or squiggles of some sort that would come out, tendrils, but I don't think daisies really have tendrils. But it just fills in that so nice, and then after it's all pressed and everything for the fusing of the template process, then it really makes it nice and easy. I did the stitching before I did the pressing, by the way, just so that it's a little easier, I think, to stitch. It's not stiff, but the puncturing of it with the needle is a little tougher after it's been pressed. So let's get some fabric over here. So I do have one question on here from Linda, and it says, on the coils, do you have to stick to one side or the other? No. We're going to take a look at that in just a few minutes, how the coils work. But first I wanted to show you a little bit with the WIGGLES templates. Now I have on here, I have stable tape on both sides so that I can flip it over. And so I have just marked a line down through here. It isn't anything other than just a straight line. And I will start, I don't know how well you can see that with the stable tape on there, but there is a line here, and there's an A and a B, and it's the same both ways, but that just kind of helps me mentally keep track of where I am. If I'm at A or B to start with. And so the stitch path is just the right size for the foot to travel through. There's no wobbling. There's not worry about being on the left or the right. It just goes through there. So we can actually lower our foot. Let me get positioned in front of the machine a little bit better. And I'm going to put my needle down right there at the seam line and my marked line. So I will be starting right on the seam line. Now I'm going to pull my bobbin thread up and drop the needle back down and then put my threads underneath. So we can see how this thread slot really is helpful. Once we have everything in place, we don't even have to have the template in there, then we can use the slot and slide right through there. Now, if you have a machine where you have difficulty in raising your foot, they will all come up some, and you don't need a lot in order to get there. But if you have a knee lifter on your sewing machine, it is really like having a third hand there to help you. So I'm going to center right on that line, and there are etch lines coming right down through the center. But if you're in the center of the thread slot, you're also in the center. It is positioned right on top of where that would be. Take a few stitches, not quite in place, but little tiny micro stitches, and that's going to secure my thread so I don't have to hang on to it. Now, this is kind of a small size template, but it's fairly easy to use. If you have trouble moving the fabric or the template without it moving, wearing a pair of gloves is very helpful. But mostly having your hands flat, so I have fingers on the template and the rest of my hand on my fabric, and that's going to let me just kind of wiggle right on down the line. We always have a tendency to want to sew straight, and so we can't with the templates here. We need to follow the path, and when we get down to our B location, we can spin the template in place and realign it right down our marked line and continue on. So if you have a tendency to have a lead foot and like to go really fast, you can do that with this one because you aren't going to go anywhere. You're not going to get off track because there is no track. So here we are. My template goes beyond where my seam line is, but I'm going to just go ahead and stitch over to that edge. We're going to find out what will happen. So I'm going to stop where my seam would be, and let's take it out of the slot. So we can see here now what our stitching looks like coming down through there. It makes just a real nice, even, curvy edge that it's kind of fun to play with. But if we wanted to create a pattern in the sashing, this would be a real good way to do that. If we are back in here, find where the location is, we can actually come along at any place. It doesn't have to just be right where we finished. We could come along now. Our center alignment line is about, not quite a half of an inch above our first mark line, but we can do an offset right there. So let's come back here and line it up. What I'm going to do is travel, actually, let me go ahead and move the template so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to travel stitch right in the ditch about 1/4 of an inch. And I know it's 1/4 of an inch approximately because the edge of my foot is now right where I first started. And I'll put the template back in place. Lining it back up is going to be a little more challenging because I didn't add an extra marked line. But we're going to just kind of figure it out here as we go. We can see where our curves are in the template, and so if the template meets up with that edge, it should put us. This is going to let us do some offset. So I didn't really have my template straight. And I could use my spacing gauge to determine how far up I am. It's about 1/4 of an inch there. And if it really mattered, I could mark a line across there also, so I could keep track of it. But I just wanted to show you how easy it is to just spin that template in place, and then we can go from there. So what I'm looking at is the positioning of my center line on the template as compared to my marked center line, and it's just about 1/4 of an inch. So the other way we could test that would be to simply have the edge of our template right on our previous stitches, but we didn't start out that way. So let's just cut that and take it out and look at it. You know, this is really one of those templates that you can't do anything wrong with it. And we can create all kinds of different patterns coming back and forth. You can overlap, you can offset, you can come along and be on that same line again, flip the template over, and you can see it's still the same way. But sometimes I found that when I was doing a different project, it was helpful to have it on both sides. I don't have it on both sides on the bigger one. Let's take a look at how it works. So let's go ahead and just mark a straight line, just for guidance purposes. This has the same alignment etchings in there that work the same way. This would be our halfway point. We can start right down there in the foot with the foot in position on the template and go from there, or put the needle in place and then position the template. This particular template will stitch 2 inches wide or a little less, because the curvature of the template, we're going to first stitch on the outside edge, which is the big curve, and then come and go the big curve. And we'll see here in just a second why that makes a difference. Once we get back to our center mark line, we are the same equal distance apart in the foot. So whether we're touching the front side or the back side, we're touching the template. Let's get that thread out of the way. Now, we went on the outside curve, so I'm going to stick with that. You can see right here that at those points, there's a wider space. But when we come right back down, then we're right on the other side now. Spin it and continue. So with this set of templates here, if you wanted to do a crisscross grid pattern with them, you could get all of your quilting completed on a fairly good size block or a block area without taking much time to do that. So we're going to come right back down here. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to move the template, but I want to turn this around and let you see what the difference is there. So it really is a wider version of this first curve line. Now, we saw how our area here is a bigger space than what it is right in the middle. Right down through the center is the 1/2 inch size of the foot, but on the ends down here, there is more room. And so if we now stay on the point side instead of the curve side, we will come shallower over here. So let's go and do that. All we're doing is following right around that stronger point, and then when we get to the center, now we're going to come over and be touching this next narrow point, or the point. And again, but this lets you have an idea of what the difference is in that. I don't know that you would want to use a pattern like this, you might, but it's how I can show you what the different sizes are of the width. So someone's asking a question I saw at a quick glance about stable tape. And unfortunately, Sew Steady does not include stable tape with the DMQuilting templates. Stable tape is a Westerly product, and so it's not automatically included. And therefore, when ordering from Sew Steady, you'll have to order separately. I will, if you're ordering from my website, I will provide some stable tape to you with the COILS templates for a short period of time. So then we come along that other end and we have a narrower section. So there's just all kinds of things you can do here. I have just a sample here of the two different sizes. So if you're on the curve side, the longer outside edge, you're going to have about 1/4 inch more in your width. I think the overall look of it isn't going to be drastically different if you went one or the other. And this simply shows you how you can have two different widths with this one particular template. So let me scan real quickly and see if there's anything I need to address in the comments. Oh, I have someone that says that she has the wiggles. I wonder if she'll tell us if she's used them and how she used them. Oh, and Sue has the wiggles also. She says she loves it. So someone else is asking a question, are these templates all packaged together? What I have here is two different sets of templates. These are the Wiggles, and they are available individually or as a set. There are two pieces, one or two. And so that is one set, and then the COILS is a completely different set. So they are not packaged as a set of 6 templates. So here's one comment on here, says that she has trouble on that right turn. I'm assuming with the larger template, maybe making the outside curve here. It's really, once you get to that center, the foot is going to be the correct width to fit just right in that space, right here at that center line. But when you come to the end, you're going to have more or less, depending on which side you're on. So if you are doing the big curve, you're going to stay along that outside, I call it, just for lack of another word, the big curve part. Let's put this over here. You're going to stitch along this edge here, and once you get back to the center, your foot is going to fit right in there. So as you begin to leave center, just kind of focus your direction on the next outside curve until you get back to center, and you're right back centered again. And then the outside. So really it's outside, 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 outside. And I'm showing you a more drastic curve. You don't really do that with the foot because it just comes straight across. You can see that right here. So I hope that part will help. It's not hard to do, but getting the hang of it initially might be a little bit tricky. So let's take a look at the coils. What do you think? So another question on here is, can you use the Westerly foot with my templates? And absolutely you can. These will work with all 1/2 inch diameter ruler foots. I don't have a Westerly on here right now. My machine company has one, and if you have one of those, they are all 1/2 inch and would also work. There are a couple of the larger size long arm machines that have a 9/16 inch foot, but everything else here is all 1/2 inch. So let me just grab a piece here. This isn't a very big piece of fabric, but I just want to show you some basics of the template to start with. This is the 4.5 inch size, and like I said, they're all the same with the exception. Let's take a look at the 6 inch in comparison. You can tell here that our center area right in here on the 6 inch, this part is a little bit wider, okay, than what we have on the 4.5 inch. It's pretty skinny right there. So the way the template works, you can start anywhere in here you want. You can stitch part of it. You don't even have to stitch the whole thing. You can do any part you want. There are several different alignment lines that actually If you put an 8-point crosshair marker on here, that is where the lines are. But you can start and stop anywhere you want to in there. Just keep track of what you're doing. You might want to use one of the little ruler sticker arrows if you're going to do a particular pattern and only do a portion of the template, just as a reminder of where you are. But that gives you a little bit of consistency so that you can get to where you want to be. There is some flex in the template. I have several pieces of stable tape on here because I move my hands around as I'm using it. If I just held it like I might with some of the other templates, as I'm working here, it's possible that you could push and move that inner area. And I don't want to do that, but it's fairly thin pieces of acrylic in there. So this template here was a little bit challenging to be able to make it work where we can have the same size of our coiling spiral as we stitch. But you just have to be aware that there is a little flex in the template, and so by holding it with your hands, you're going to keep it real stable and then move your fingers around. But more stable tape around the outside is helpful, and that's why I said I will provide you with some stable tape for a short period of time. It's not automatically included, but if you give me a note in the special instructions that you need stable tape, then I will include it. So let's move this over and take a look. This now is the 6-inch. It is the biggest one, and it will also flex some if you push on that. It's acrylic. You know, it can move. If we bend these things or sit on them or stand on them or drop them, they can break. But having our stable tape around the outside, and that'll help grab onto the fabric, and then we can just kind of hold this part together as we move around. It wouldn't hurt to wear a pair of gloves while you're doing this because it's going to let you hang on to everything a little bit easier. So if you're absolutely anti-gloves, you don't have to do it. But if you do use gloves, quilting gloves, when you're doing your work, that really will make it easier because you just have more of things that's gripping your fabric and your template. So these are really quite easy to use, almost to the point where it's kind of silly to have to even show you. It isn't, because you need to know what you're doing, but the way they work, it's so simple in design. It's kind of like the winding ways. Your foot can't go anywhere but in the path. So here we are. I'm going to start on the outside at B. We could start on the inside, but I'm going to start on the outside. Let's hang on to that thread so we don't make a big mess underneath. Definitely don't want to have to clean that up. Let's see if maybe we can adjust that camera just a little bit here. Maybe even bring it down a little lower. So just bear with me for just a second here. We'll get you situated. Now, I think you might have a little bit better line of sight on it. So we can start here in the corner and come over to this point, and it can create a little bit of a connecting tail. Just keep that in mind. We're not going to do that right now. Just know that that's where it would be. A few little starting stitches. But you can see here how the foot is the same width of what the opening in the template is. So it really is a matter of hold it in position and travel through that stitch path. So I don't go a long ways before I move. Just because it's easier not to. So you want to just be careful not to let that part lift up and get underneath it. It's not scary, and I don't want to alarm you thinking that it is. Just because I said that, I just don't want to not give you all of the information. But you can see here, I'm not moving the template. I'll keep at least one hand on it all the time and move my fingers around and have a few inches to go at a time. So we can keep on traveling right through that stitch path. Better move my fingers. Now here, if you're not careful, like I showed you that flex in the template, you could push it to the side, but believe it or not, these are very forgiving, and if you got off track a little bit, it's not really going to show. So here we are in the center. There's a couple of different things we can do here. One of them is to backtrack back out, which is really kind of cool. It gives you a little bit more boldness in your pattern. But what I'm going to do, notice here, let's turn around. Here is the label on the template. I'm going to just rotate it in place. And I didn't put any markings on here, so that was probably dumb on my part, because now I don't know where my center is necessarily. Maybe we better do that. But we can actually just rotate the template in place and stitch right back out, and that creates an interesting little pattern. Let me put some marks in there just so I know where to line up. And I spin the template in place. I probably wouldn't do this on every one of my patterns in my design, but you certainly can. And then here's my marked lines that I would align with. So there's lots of different ways here to come on around and line up again. You could go at an angle. It's really kind of interesting. All of this would then just overlay and create some interesting little centers in other areas. Let's try it right here on the diagonal. So I'm still in the center. Get that out of there just a little bit. You will overstitch your previous quilting. One thing about it, your foot is not going to wobble back and forth in the stitch path. You will go just where the path is, and so if you don't push the edges of the template, it's going to stay right on track. So you wouldn't have to do this kind of backtracking, just a different kind. You could stitch right on top of where you did the first time coming out, but I just wanted to show you a variation of doing that. Some of it will be right on top of our previous stitches. So we actually made just a slight variation in our turn. Let's cut that thread and remove it. And so this is really, here's where we started with our first set of stitching, and then when we rotated the template, here's where we ended up. But in the center part right here is where we were at center, turned the template, and worked our way back out. So it's just a different way that we could do our spirals. On my little daisy background area, I just did straight coils without any backing back out or anything like that. And some of it you can see here, I even stitched over the top of some others in there. So there's really not anything you can do that would be wrong. It's just whatever makes it work easily for you. So I do have a little sheet here, and I will post this. I could not do it. I was having too much trouble just getting logged on for the live. But I do have a little bit of a information sheet. It's just some optional designs for the coils that I will post that as a PDF that you can download and take a look at. It just shows placement. So here is the wave motion and how you would come up here and around, and then here you would backtrack back out and do your next pattern over there. And here are the ways that you would lay out your templates in order to do that. So I will make that available to you. I will post it on the Sew Steady area later today, as soon as we get out of here and I'm able to get it on there for you. So I will be going through the questions, and if there's anything that we need to look at or answer, I will do that for you. So someone is asking what type of a sewing machine. I guess she means, Norma, the brand. The machine I'm working on today is a Bernina machine. And I have the Bernina foot for that. I do, and I have a Westerly foot for it, and I have used that. But today I have that Bernina foot on there, number 72. So Sandy says that she has cut her stable tape to fit the coil area. And so Sandy, I'm assuming what you mean is inside these little parts. You know, you could do that if you want to. If that helps to do it that way, then by all means do it that way. But I found by putting So I have 1-inch pieces out here and 3/4-inch pieces on the side, and then just move my fingers around. And so whatever works for you is what I want you to do. And Michelle is asking, where can you buy these in Australia? Punch with Judy should have them. I don't know if she has them available yet. Can get them for sure. And some of the others down there also. So anyone that carries any of the Sew Steady products has access to all of these. So Jenny is asking how many sizes are there in the coils. So I will once again, there's a 4.5-inch, 5-inch, 5.5, and a 6-inch. And Sue is asking, could you just move the template with a needle down? Yes, you can do that, and just to continue on if you wanted to, where would stitch in here and stop, and then just uncoil the template from around the foot. I will go ahead and not make everyone sit here and wait while I look through the comments, but once we close and get out of here, I will do that and answer any questions that maybe we haven't addressed at this time. So I hope that this has helped you in understanding how the coils and the wiggles work. I have done just very little demoing of both of these two different sets, and so today wanted to just spend a little more time and focus on that. Like I said, I will make this page available. It's just a one-sheet thing. It is a little bit more than what's with the template, but it's how to lay them out. And if you have staple tape on both sides, then you can flip them and do other things. So that's it for me. I will go through the questions and the comments and respond to all of those that I can. And this is Donna McCauley in the DMQuilting Studio, signing off for now. Bye-bye.